This is With an Ohio Bias, a podcast for real fans with D and Jake. Jake, we want to talk real quick about the number one overall draft pick. And it pretty much seems like a foregone conclusion that the Cleveland Browns will select Myles Garrett. I think I've heard you mention the name Courtney Brown as possible trepidation as the only reason not to select him. But I was a big fan the first 2 years at Texas A&M. I thought he was, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable objects that were the linemen in the SEC. A little drop-off last year. People say he was a little injured. My biggest thing now, though, is with the features that I see as we get to see a whole lot more of him, beyond the things that gave me pause before about him not wanting to play in the cold and, praying for the Dallas Cowboys to trade Tony Romo, who has now retired, which I guess we will just keep glancing over that because I don't think he belongs in Canton. But that's a podcast for another day. He has so many interests. The one thing, I don't know if this is just reporters looking for a story to, build out his narrative, but the paleontology, the poetry, I'm not hearing about a lot of love for football, and that also gives me pause.
The Courtney Brown thing, you don't want to draft someone because you're worried about them getting injured. It's not like it's an injury that he's already had. That's just the worst case scenario. But what you bring up is very real. You worry about guys, especially in football, where the demands are so high with your body, with the training camps, with just playing in 16 straight weeks the way they do, minus the bye week. And if you don't love it, it becomes just a cash cow for you. There's a lot of guys that have physical, great, just freak ability and can get the job done and do it because they can make money doing it. But eventually that fizzles out. The guys I want on my team, they've got to love football and they've got to want to win and they got to want to just basically live, breathe, and sleep. And this is their career. It's one of the shortest careers you could potentially have in any profession. So, it gives me pause about a guy that may not, or we're questioning already his love of football.
You've talked with a lot of former athletes and things like that. Whenever you talk to somebody, and I'll take it even here, the late, great Senator John Glenn, one of the great exchanges that I've had and conversations that I point to in my life, I actually got to do something with him, but we were riding in a car, through Ohio, and I asked him about space. And I asked him what was that, the proverbial question I'm sure he got, over 1 million times in all his travel and exchanges with people. But I just asked him what was that first moment, the first time that, he saw outside the Earth's atmosphere. I was very specific with that. His face lit up. And, a recent conversation on our podcast with Jonathan Wells, we were talking about, what it's like for student athletes to have to, budget money and whether they should be compensated, those kind of questions. But when we talked about beating the team up north, you can hear it in his voice. Something else came out. We have that passion when we talk about our teams, whether it be them losing or them winning. You can hear that passion in our voices. And that's all you want to hear. I'm not saying that it's not there for Myles Garrett. I haven't seen it. I would love to have a conversation with him. He's always welcome on With an Ohio Bias, of course. But I hope the Browns are making that assessment as they're going through this process.
Scary part about that whole thing, and what we've talked about many times, is that there's no numbers for that. There is no analytics to measure a person's will or his want to play or the extracurriculars in a person's life. And that's where the scouts come involved in the pro personnel and the college personnel scouts. You got to get to know some of these guys before you can bring them on, or you risk bringing on a guy that doesn't care about football, and in 3 years is going to say, you know what, I've made enough money as the number one overall pick. I'm just going to go retire and read poetry.
Finally, the Legends look like they're going to be getting some money from the CTE, not to take this down that road, but we saw those San Francisco 49ers, a lot of their linebackers and some linemen for other reasons left, but Think about Chris Borland from Wisconsin, from the 49ers, who played a couple of years and then decided to walk away. Even I'll take this to MMA real quick. Last night we saw Anthony Rumble Johnson, who lost to Daniel Cormier, and he walks away from the sport. So, it's not just exclusive to football, but what we're talking about, that passion and love, the points that you make. We're hoping the Browns are doing the due diligence that it takes, which is not something that we can say was a guarantee years past.
You look at this guy and you just look at him on a piece of paper, there's no doubt that this guy is by far the best player in the draft and looks like a guy that can't miss. But based on outside circumstances, there's so many variables involved that you just got to make sure that it's the right guy.
Not going to hold you to it, but what would be a successful season sack-wise, for Myles Garrett in his rookie campaign?
I think if you're taking him with the number 1 pick, 10 sacks would be where I think that you should be. I mean, you look at Joey Bosa and what he did in 3/4 of a season. I think this guy is what he is. I think any less than 8 would be a disappointment, and I'd be expecting 10.
Oof, we know Nassib had 2.5. I think Agba had close to 4.5. I was thinking 6 or 7, just because. I know we got Greg Williams. Are you Tony? Calling the shots, but
he's going to blitz.
Yeah, we're going to blitz. Yeah, all right. Well, hey. Let's hope. And hopefully he's not holding, like you said, 3/4. If he gets a full, training camp and everything like that, it would definitely be exciting, and hopefully he's healthy too. So you can hear more of things like this on With an Ohio Bias. Be checking us out, withanohiobias.com. You can find us on iTunes, the full podcast on iTunes. Just search With an Ohio Bias. Give us a like, subscribe, and write us a review even, and we would really appreciate that. Thanks for listening, and we will talk at you next time.